right, well, welcome everybody. If you are just joining, just put your name and pronouns, your location or home organization that you love working with, and one reason you're going to keep on fighting, because we got a lot of fight left in us and we got a lot to win. Go ahead to the next slide. I'm just going to walk us through the agenda tonight. So we're just going to do a standard, what we do at every monthly meeting is just a little who is Renewable Heat Now, what we're all about. I made a little movie for you all tonight. I think all of you are probably in that movie. Just a gratitude and just an identification of the incredible work that we have done. We will then get a special report about our opponent's national fuel gas from Shay O'Reilly from Spring Street Climate Fund. And then Jessica Azoulay and Michael Hernandez will walk us through what happened with the New York Heat Act in the budget and what the rest of the legislative session is looking like for us. Laura Schindel from Food and Water Watch is going to take us through some take action steps. And then Isaac Silberman-Gorin and Carol Resnick are going to walk us through a sustaining our movement and sustaining ourselves exercise, which is very beautiful. So we have a packed agenda tonight. So let's move on to the next slide. Just quickly about Renewable Heat Now. Who are we? Look at us. We're so cute. Okay, go to the next slide. Just a reminder, why we're fighting for the New York Heat Act right now is that buildings are the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in our entire state. Because we burn fossil fuels for heating and hot water and cooking, and all the methane that leaks along the way with all the infrastructure from the fracking distribution system. So we want to make sure to eliminate gas so we can continue to live on planet Earth. Okay, next slide. There are reasons why we want to, fight, because methane, fracked gas causes climate change. It destroys our health and safety. It produces jobs that make people sick. We want to make sure that we are building an economy that people can flourish and be healthy and have excellent jobs. And we want it to be more affordable. We have to stop digging stuff out of the ground to burn it for energy when we could be harnessing all of the natural free resources around us, like the sun, the wind, and the heat from the earth. Next slide. Here's a little video for you all. I'll stop talking and just let you all kick back and enjoy it and watch. It's 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Cool. Okay, we can go to the next slide, and I'll throw the link to that video in the chat if you guys want to watch it. Okay, we're gonna hand it over to Shay O'Reilly to kick us off. Now, normally we would have Shay go after Jessica and Michael that tell us about what happened, but because we love our people, we want Shay to be able to put his daughter Rosa to bed at 7:30. So we're gonna kick it off with Shay, and then we'll sort of like go back in order. So take it away, my dear friend Shay O'Reilly.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Hi, everybody. I'm Shay O'Reilly. I'm down in Brooklyn and I'm with a group called Spring Street Climate Fund. And I'm going to give you a very short presentation on one of our key opposition leaders here, which is the company National Fuel Gas. So some of y'all may be familiar with them because they may send you a bill for gas every month. They are the gas utility out in Western New York. This is a map of their service territory. So they provide gas in Buffalo and a lot of the suburbs out there, and then down towards the Pennsylvania border. But there's a couple things that are important to know about National Fuel before I talk about what they've been doing to stop the New York Heat Act. One is that they are the only large gas-only utility in New York State. So all of our other big utilities that serve a lot of customers do gas and electric. So National Grid provides my gas in Brooklyn, unfortunately, but they also do electricity in other parts of their service territory. National Fuel is gas only. They do not have an electrification wing, which means that if they are forced to shut down their business in gas, they do not have an easy pivot ahead of them. The other thing to know is that while this is their service territory in New York, they go right up to and cross the border with Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, they are actually a fracking operation. So they have a couple of subsidiaries that do the gas extraction and then transport the gas via pipelines that they also own up to their service territory where they are the gas utility. So they understand that New York Heat is a threat to their business model, and they've been mobilizing very hard to fight it. Next slide, please. So these are this is a headline on the left here from New York State Focus. Actually, I'll put the link in the chat once I'm done with my presentation. But this is from April, like just earlier this month, by the reporter Colin Kinneberg, where regulators found that National Fuel was actually using ratepayer money, the money that they take from Western New York families, to pay for advocacy against the New York Heat Act and the All Electric Buildings Act. And this is an example over here on the right of one of their websites. And actually, when the regulator found that, they ordered them to stop using that to lobby specifically, but they're still allowing them to use ratepayer funds on this website about the quote unquote benefits of natural gas. Natural gas, right? We know it's fossil fuels, it's fracked gas. And so they've been using our money, ratepayer money, to lobby against our interests and to try and continue propping up their business model and their operations of extraction. But in addition to funding all of these websites, they're members of New Yorkers for Affordable Energy and a bunch of other front groups. And they've also been working all of their connections in the business world in Western New York among groups like the Buffalo Niagara Partnership, and ultimately the Business Council of New York State. But I also wrote a report that came out earlier this month about specifically their campaign contributions. So you can go to the next slide. So these are two charts that I created from research pulling from the State Board of Elections. Here on the left is actually showing PAC contributions. This is the Political Action Committee contributions to state level candidates from 2020 to 2023. So this is everything that's recorded in the Board of Elections website. It is both state and it also includes a couple of local legislators, but it's mostly state assembly members and senators. And this compared them to the two other largest utilities in New York State, Con Ed and National Grid. I don't know why I did the balloons. I'm not celebrating this. This is terrible. So in that time period, they contributed slightly over $200,000 to state candidates, whereas Con Ed contributed just over $50,000 and National Grid contributed just under $100,000. So they're spending more than twice as much as other utilities on this campaign contributions in our elections. And then if you look here, this is a comparison I did where I pulled a list of all of our state assembly members, the Democratic assembly members, and I looked at the primary utility that serves gas customers in their region. And if you look across the other 5 largest utilities in New York State, Central Hudson, Con Ed, National Grid, NYSEG, RG&E, again, not to say that these utilities are our friends, not necessarily, but the percentage of assembly members co-sponsoring New York Heat across these territories averages out to about 80%. We have 80% co-sponsorship among Democratic Assembly members across all other gas utility service territories. In National Fuels territory, where they've been contributing to nearly every single legislator in the last 3 years, I'm telling you, like out of 19 state legislators in that territory, they have given to all but one of them. They have gotten only 16% of our Democratic Assembly members support New York Heat, co-sponsor New York Heat. So they've been using their influence to go to war against New York Heat, which is something that challenges their business model, and they have been successful in doing so, right? Like they are showing lawmakers that they can set the narrative around elections and around gas and around heating their homes through exercising their financial power, which they get from ratepayers. I'll also name that as I was doing this report, we know that they're actually pushing for a rate hike right now for their Western New York customers. They announced it last December, and our good friends at Push Buffalo have been organizing against it. They want to raise rates to accumulate $200 million more from customers by 2025. And actually, they also announced last month at a shareholder conference that they were going to do a stock buyback program to the tune of 88 million. Sorry, yeah. I'm going to flip those numbers. I apologize. They're doing a stock buyback program that would exceed the cost of their rate hikes. So basically, what they're actually doing is they're proposing a rate hike that would then funnel straight to their shareholders as part of a stock buyback program to increase the value of their stock. Anshal's dropping some great links in the chat. He's done a lot of this really great research, but I just want to be really clear that when we talk about New York Heat, what we're doing is we're challenging the role of these gas utilities, these fossil companies, and they will do anything they can to continue making their profits off of choking our future. And that's what we're up against with New York Heat. So I want to name that villain here, that like we know that the fight to protect our planet, that the fight to protect future generations is a fight of organized people versus organized money. So it's all 74 of us on this call and all the hundreds and thousands of our friends across New York State fighting against the role of money in our politics and in our society. And I think we can win, but it's going to take all of us, and we're going to have to keep pushing. That's all I'll say. Thanks for letting me chat about that. I'm happy to answer any questions. I am going to go off script here a little bit. I hope folks forgive me and say that National Fuel is spending money in our elections. They're contributing to candidates, and my organization just announced today that we're starting an independent expenditure fund to help spend money on challenging candidates who are not supporting New York Heat. If you are interested in pledging to contribute, I just dropped a Google form in the chat. We'd appreciate it. We can't take money or spend it yet because we're still getting set up with the State Board of Elections, but be happy to talk about that more. And sorry, I know this is not a partisan call, but I'm going off script, so please forgive me.
We forgive you, Shay. Thank you so much. And tell Rose a good night and have sweet dreams tonight. Um, we're gonna go next to Jessica Azoulay from Alliance for a Green Economy. And Jessica's gonna walk us through what the heck just happened. Take it away, Jessica.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining tonight. And thank you so much for all the incredible work that you've done so far to work to pass the New York Heat Act. Kim, that video was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with all of us and creating it. It really lifted my spirits to just see all of the work that has gone in so far to pass the New York Heat Act. It has been an incredible effort, and even though we are up against some stiff opposition, I also, like Shay, believe that we will win. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened with New York Heat in the budget. First, in case you haven't heard, I'm sorry to be delivering the disappointing news that we did not get New York Heat included in the New York State budget this year. We were very, very close, and we had the support of the governor, the support of the Senate, and the support of a majority of assembly members to get New York Heat in the budget. We had an incredible grassroots movement that showed up in Albany in huge numbers, not once, but twice, continued to organize locally. We had incredible media coverage all across the state in so many different media outlets, talking about New York heat as a major priority for the environmental movement in New York, and covering the need for energy affordability and climate action. So we had so much going for us, and we got really, really close. But in the end, New York heat was not included in the budget. I think I'm going to just cover a few of the reasons why. Obviously, we'll never know the whole full story of exactly why New York heat didn't get into the budget. But I will just say a few things. Even though we had the majority of assembly members, we did continued to have some holdouts. A handful of assembly members who never got on to support the bill and continued to oppose the bill. And ultimately, from what we can tell, they were successful in blocking the assembly from really coming to the negotiating table enough to get New York heat over the finish line. And so we still have work to do to get our state assembly as a body supportive of this bill. A couple of other things that, I think it's really important for all of us to keep in mind is that this bill is incredibly transformative. We are really challenging gas utilities in New York and the fossil fuel industry. And this is a huge next step for implementing the climate bill and really helping to move New York's buildings off of gas by helping to move where the investments go and taking investments out of gas infrastructure and into the renewable solutions that we need and providing those to people. And so in order to do that, we need to change public service law, which is written in a pretty complex way. And so a lot of the bill is complex because we have to change a law that's already complex. And so, this is not a small undertaking to get this bill done. And even though we were so close, and it's really disappointing that we didn't get New York heat over the finish line in the budget. These kinds of big transformative and complex bills do take time. And so I don't want you all to be disheartened. I want you to be so proud of everything that we did and how close we got, and know that we're going to keep pushing and keep fighting, and we are going to get this bill over the finish line. Change is really hard, and it takes courage, and we need our assembly members to step up and find that courage to help us get it over the finish line. And so Michael's going to talk really quick about what the rest of the session looks like, and where we are in the legislative session and what's possible. But I will just say that one thing that's clear to me, and that I would ask all of you to keep in mind, is that no bill ever has 100%, not no bill, but very few bills have 100% support in any legislative body. So our goal isn't necessarily to never have any opposition, but we really need our supporters in the assembly to work to overcome that opposition. And so I think we're at a phase in this campaign where, even though we have a majority of assembly members co-sponsoring the bill, now is the time that we need to ask our assembly members to fight even harder for this bill, including and especially those that support the bill. And we need to hold our assembly as a body accountable for blocking New York heat in the budget and working to get New York heat done this session. We need this to be a priority for assembly members, including our supporters. And for many, it is. There were so many assembly members that really went to the mat and fought for this bill, but we need more assembly members to be doing that and to making this bill a priority to get it over the finish line. So with that, I will pass it over to Michael, who's going to talk a little bit about where we are in the legislative process and what's next for the rest of the legislative session.
Michael, before you start, there was a really great question in the chat. And Jessica, I think that you would be able to explain this really well. The question came from Anne, and she asks, can you explain how just a handful of assembly members can prevent inclusion, and what kind of numbers are we looking at?
It's a great question. We don't know how many numbers we have in terms of, you know, we know that there are still assembly members that are not co-sponsors of the bill. But we don't know fully how many of them were speaking out against the bill because we're not privy to those conversations. And so we don't fully know how big our opposition is in the assembly and exactly who. And we don't know exactly what the leadership in the assembly was taking into account when they ultimately did not get to a place where they could where they negotiated a version of New York Heat in the budget. So you know, we are infuriated, but because, and maybe Michael can explain this a little bit more, because this was a budget fight, there wasn't a vote in the assembly. So we don't know who would vote for and against. Instead, this was a three-way negotiation between the governor, who was supportive, the Senate, who was supportive, and the assembly. And all three needed to come to an agreement to put New York Heat in the budget. And so this was a leadership decision on the part of the assembly, based on, you know, where the body as a whole was at. And so that's what happened. And hopefully, you know, in the rest of session, we're going to be working towards seeing if we can get this bill done and get it to a vote. So I will, with that, maybe pass it on to Michael, and, you know, if other people want to answer the question in the chat, if people want to add more to that, feel free.
Great. Really happy to be here. And just let me get my screen up. I have a slide here that I like to share. All right. So basically, just want to go over, you know, what is going to be the timeline for the rest of session, and what are some pathways that we could move forward, that New York Heat could move forward. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Michael Hernandez. I'm New York Policy Director for Rewiring America. I'm an attorney admitted in New York and California, and worked for the Assembly actually for a number of years, where I was a negotiator for the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. Rewiring America is really focused on the demand side of electrification. How can we help people in their electrification journey? How can they get incentives? How can they get services that will allow them to move forward with electrification and energy efficiency? Post-budget timeline. The first thing wanted to kind of touch base on is the first day of post-budget session will be Monday, May 6th. So legislature will come back and gavel in and start passing legislation starting on May 6th. The last day of session is Thursday, June 6th. So that is the official schedule for the rest of session. So about 5 weeks left. Next week, next Thursday, will be the first time that we get a notice of what is intended to be in the first committee meetings that week of May 6th. So we will get notice Thursday or Friday of next week of what committees are meeting and what they plan to have on their agendas. So between now and then is a time where we can influence chairs of committees on what they should be putting on their agenda. That would include Chairman Zabrowski of the Corporations Committee, where New York Heat is currently has been referred to. In order for New York Heat to get voted on the floor of the Assembly, it needs to be reported out of the Assembly Corporations Committee. So that means Assemblyman Chairman Zabrowski needs to put that on an agenda that would get reported out, go to the floor, and then for a vote. So we will find out next week by Thursday or Friday, what committee meetings are meeting and what will be on their agenda. The same thing will happen the following week on May 9th, where they will announce the following week's agendas and what bills will be on those agendas. So that's probably going to be the last week of committees. Committees will start to shut down either the second or third week of May, and will no longer be meeting after that unless there's special circumstances. So we should plan that the last committee meeting for the Corporations Committee could be the week of the 6th, or it could be the week of the 13th. There's a possibility that there will be some special corporation meetings that could be called at the discretion of the chair and the speaker of the assembly. So just wanted to talk about that. And then I just wanted, so that's our post-budget timeline. And then there's several ways that New York Heat could make it get passed by the assembly. The first way is the traditional committee process. That's where Assemblyman Zabrowski puts it on an agenda. It gets voted on by the Corporations Committee and then reported to the floor for a vote by the whole assembly. That's your traditional method of getting New York Heat past this session. The second way would be if the speaker determines that he's going to re-reference the bill to a different committee, like the Rules Committee or any of the other committees like Ways and Means or Codes. So re-reference it so that it could get to the floor for a vote through another committee. It would then be re-referenced to that other committee, would need to be reported out of that committee to get to the floor for a vote by the assembly. So that's the second method. The third method would be to take the bill that has already passed the Senate and has been delivered to the assembly and to vote on that bill. The speaker can take that bill, bring it to the floor for a vote, and the assembly could just vote on the same bill that the Senate has already enacted. So that is a third method. Now, I'll just mention here that once the Assembly and the Senate pass identical legislation, that means that that bill can now be delivered to the governor for her signature. The governor has the discretion to enter into negotiations for chapter amendments after identical language has been passed by both houses. So this is a point in time where if both houses pass New York Heat in the identical language, where there could be negotiations on what that final language will look like before the governor signs off on the bill. The governor has the option to veto the legislation. She has a number of days after it's delivered to her by the Senate in which to sign it. If she doesn't sign it within a certain period of time, it's enacted automatically. If the Senate waits till the end of the year and delivers the bill on December 31st, and then there's what's called a pocket veto, and that's where the governor has a certain period of time to sign the bill. And if she doesn't sign it, then it's vetoed. So there's some different paths that could potentially happen. And then finally, there is an end of the session omnibus bill. Every year at the end of session, generally the executive and the houses agree on an omnibus bill that is full of different proposals and pieces of legislation similar to the budget, but without any of the appropriation language. And so New York Heat could be included in that omnibus bill that moves through the both houses at the end of session. And so that is those are our pathways, and I will pass it off to the next speaker. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michael. You and Jessica are just so incredible at explaining really complicated, crazy things very easily to us. So much appreciation for all the work that you have done this budget season. So who's mad? Who wants to take action? We're going to pass it over to Laura Schindel from Food and Water Watch. And she's going to walk us through how we can take action and get ourselves set up. Okay, thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Kim and Michael and everybody who's spoken so far. So with that timeline and context that Jessica and Michael have explained, the next steps that we see to be fruitful are continuing to hammer the assembly. Now, we know Speaker Hasty was the one at the negotiating table for the budget, but he's one figurehead of a whole body. And there's also a limited amount of leverage and power that we have over just Speaker Hasty. He's at the end of the day listening to the people that he represents, which aren't just his constituents, it's the other assembly members. So we've been figuring out how do we keep the pressure on or even build more pressure on the assembly members that let us down, that either actually blocked New York Heat intentionally, or were on the sidelines not fighting for it, not fighting to get it passed. Because at the end of the day, there is always some legislators that are going to be against any piece of legislation. That's inevitable. But you need your champions to fight hard, and you need your, fence sitters to get off the fence. We are still dominating the media. I see that slide there. There was some good coverage even just today about like the budget's biggest climate failure was the lack of inclusion of New York Heat. So that's good, right? If we keep pressure up in the media, that puts pressure on the assembly members. They need to get a message that we're not forgetting that they failed us here and that there are political consequences for that. So if we can, so we've got a couple ideas of ways that we can all take action together to put that pressure on the assembly. And they cover the whole spectrum of how we influence the political system. First one is that we are having lobby meetings, speaking directly to our legislators to say, hey, what's up? Why didn't you get New York Heat done in the budget? Will you commit to fighting for it to get it done this year? Post-budget before the end of session, because there's a narrow window. We need them to fight tooth and nail to get it done. So New York Renews has set up a bunch of lobby meetings, and I'm going to post a link in the chat where you can find your own legislator and sign up to participate in those lobby meetings. Sorry, it is a lengthy link there, but they need to hear from their constituents that we noticed that the New York Heat Act was not in there and that we're holding them accountable for that and placing the blame at their feet, because that's the political strategy of all of these politicians is to point their fingers at other people, to deflect blame so that they don't have to be blamed for inaction. But so it's going to be our job to say, no, you can't point the finger at somebody else. We're holding you responsible. So sign up for a lobby meeting. A lot of them are virtual with your assembly member. And you'll see when you click the link, there's like multiple pages. So you can like find in the bottom right to go into page 2, page 3, and scroll for the lobby meetings that make sense for you for where you live. So thank you, Kim, for sharing a better link. Appreciate that. And the next thing is that we can do is send them emails, right? We meet with them and speak to them. We also correspond with them via email. So we've got a link to send them a note saying, hey, you need to pass New York Heat now that the budget is done. And I'm going to put that in the chat. And people can go ahead and take a moment to send that easy message now. They need, again, to know that their constituents noticed that we have dropped the ball on climate and that we don't find it acceptable. So if people want to take a moment to fill out that link and send a quick email message to your assembly member, that is helpful. And then, so those two things I talked about, the meetings and the emails, those are direct communications with them and are fairly polite. The next thing to escalate is to embarrass them publicly. Not only are we mad, but we're going to make sure that other voters that you represent know that you have messed up. So the other things we're going to do are embarrass them publicly and hold them accountable. So one thing we can do there is be on social media. So we've got some tweets to share for some particular assembly members that posted about Earth Day or something. And we'd like to take some time now for people, whoever has a Twitter account, to comment on the assembly member's own tweet saying, what do you mean celebrating Earth Day? We didn't get New York Heat done, like, and holding them accountable. Express your rage in a comment. And that's all visible to their entire, social media network. So several comments on their own tweets can really make them look bad, which is what we want. They need. So I'm going to share a couple links, and while I'm sharing them and while people are typing, I can briefly explain, who's who and what's what here. The first link I'm going to share is for the Twitter account for the entire New York State Assembly. This is their entire legislative body. So, and you can see once you navigate to that, there's already some comments underneath that tweet that you can use as an example of the tone and what you might want to say. So that is, so this is for everybody that's on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, stand by, we still have more to do. But go ahead and write a comment on the assembly Twitter thing. And then I've got some other tweets that you can also comment underneath. You might have to do that a little later because I'm running out of time and I have a few more things to tell you about. But here is a Twitter that Dee Dee Barrett, a tweet that Dee Dee Barrett posted. She is the chair of the Energy Committee and would not co-sponsor New York Heat and would not support it. So she needs to be held accountable. And then I also have a tweet to comment on from Assembly Member Glick. She is the chair of the Environment Committee, and she maintained during the budget fight that New York Heat should not be in the budget and that it needs to happen after the budget. And as an Environment Committee chair that's often good on these sorts of issues, her absence here was really harmful. So we need to hold her to account as well. And for anybody that's on Facebook, I will share Dee Dee Barrett's Facebook page. So if you're not on Twitter, but you're on Facebook, you can do the same sort of thing, but on posts on Dee Dee Barrett's Facebook page. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was that we're actually going to have some actions at some of these influential assembly members' districts. We're still trying to figure out where they're going to be and what makes sense, but one that we do have scheduled that we'd love for you to RSVP to. Anybody in New York City should come on Monday, May 6th to Assembly Member Glick's office in Manhattan by Union Square for an in-district action saying, hey, are you going to fight for New York Heat now that the budget's over? You promised you would, and kind of call out her bluff of inaction. So do sign up if you're in the city to join us at Assembly Member Glick's office on May 6th. And if you're not in the city, or if you want to get a message to your own assembly member, we encourage you to show up at their district office. They are in town until May 6th when they go back to Albany. So pay them a visit, say that you're upset about the blockage of New York Heat, and stay tuned for more actions that we will do to hold these problematic assembly members accountable. And all of this builds more and more pressure to get it done. So that's what I got. Thanks. Sorry I went over time.
No, that's okay, Laura. Thank you so much for that. And I put a recap in the chat. So if you guys want to copy and paste that for after the power hour, because we're going to also really want to focus here because we have our amazing people that are helping us to teach ourselves how to sustain ourselves, therefore sustaining our movement, which is all of us here on this call and more. So I'm going to turn it over to Isaac Silberman Gorn and Carol Resnick, who have been leading groups of sustaining ourselves meetups, and take it away, Isaac.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much for having us. Yeah, someone want to go to the next slide?
Okay, so this is who we are. And we don't really want to take up a long time about who we are. So read it fast and then we will go forward. Why don't we just move to the next slide, Isaac, and then you can talk about what we're intending to do right here.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So the goal for, the next 15 minutes, basically just to offer a little bit of a chance for reflection on the emotional impact of us not winning this year, not winning New York Heat in the budget. I should say this budget season, so we can forge ahead productively. Yeah, and so the reason for doing this work is for allocating time is so that we can continue to do our best work. We are also acknowledging the limits that this is, 10 or 12 minutes on Zoom with 75 people, 80 people. So yes, there are limits to the process, and that's okay. Yeah, so next slide.
Okay, so really this is about dealing with the fact that as oh my goodness, I didn't mean to be off screen. This is really dealing with the fact that as just humans, we are impacted by our experiences, and that even though we have a lot to look forward to and a lot of cognitive information about what happened and why, and we know we tried our best and blah, 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 we still are left with the impact of whatever those feelings happen to be, which will be different for everybody, but that really takes some juice out of what we have available. So we make a point of giving some space to those feelings for the purpose of kind of clearing the deck enough so that we can go forward with full capacity. So next slide. Okay. Andra made this slide. Isn't it fabulous? People have a lot of different feelings. Whatever you're feeling, it's the correct feeling. And, could be any of these things, could be something totally different. I think depends on who you are, what your work has been in the movement up to this point. You might be relatively new and disillusioned and surprised. You might be a little too crusty and cynical because you've been doing it a little long. It could be anything. But how you're feeling deserves a little attention. Okay, so next slide. Okay, and we already said this, so let's go on to our next slide. Okay, so, whoop, nope, the one before this. Thank you, thank you. Okay, we hate that we're on Zoom and that people can't talk to people, but that's the truth. So please take some time to just share your feelings very succinctly, whatever they are for you, in the chat, and Isaac and I will read them out so that we can hear each other. So go. Okay, I see rising cynicism.
Yeah, that one's from me. All right,
Disheartened but still determined. Arg, that is Jessica. Okay. Tired and frustrated, pessimistically hopeful, disappointed, wanting to run in 1,000 directions at once, cynical, still kind of shocked. You want to take a few?
Yeah, so I'm seeing disbelief, hopeful, which is pretty awesome. I'm seeing F corporate utilities. Thank you, Kim, for that.
Yes, good.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
And capitalism, yeah. Okay.
capitalism, yeah, F but capitalism. This setback has made me more determined to push through and fight, okay? I cannot personally explain. The more
Um,
angry, the more energized I get.
Time to call on my inner Puncho and bounce back up after being knocked to the floor. Good. That's a fun one.
That's great.
Sad for our leaders, Lisandra, Isaac, Anshul, and Mike. Oh boy, it's going. And others, all you amazing people who have been so superhuman through that. That's very sweet, Maura. Thank you.
Mm.
Um, Gratitude for the leaders in our movement, empathy for those who will suffer because we're not meeting our CLCPA goals is gross. Yeah, awesome. I think this is a good time. You want to keep
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Should we keep it
let's
going?
move it forward, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you want to reflect any of that back, Carol? Or should I?
I am just very time conscious and I think we got to keep going if we want to do the rest of what we have to do.
Okay, let's keep it rolling. Yeah. Um,
I, did we, yes, there you go.
yeah. So part of that all this stuff is very real. It's real. I promise we've all, and everything is okay. Also, all these thoughts and feelings are all right. The positive spin, and part of what we talked about when we were pulling this together is how can we be honest and not trite. We're big on being really honest. The positive way to think about this is in the chat again. This is going to be a group thing. What's something you've learned or accomplished that you'll bring with you as we move forward in the campaign?
And
So
Isaac, can I
look,
just jump in and give
please.
a few examples here? Because I think it's not just to get on the positive, but to recognize that in the battle was lost, but many things were built in the process. And I think for people to go back and consider, we built a great lobbying team. We got to know our legislator better. Whatever the structures and the process and the things that happened that are not going to go away, that are continuing tools and resources that you and your organizations have built. We need to remember those right now.
Yeah, and so I'm seeing, just to mention, like one of the most pleasurable, enjoyable things for me is watching someone lobby for the first time. Like, yeah, you're meeting with a rep who's making decisions that affect us all. So I see it's going to be a long haul. We need to rethink strategy. Um, Kim left a rhyme there that I'm going to do my best at this point of the night. When you're resigned, others shine so that you can shine when we are resigned. Okay. Melissa has a great t-shirt. It's a local Albany printing company,
Mhm.
and they did great. They're really comfortable.
Betty is, I feel enormous gratitude for all who led the fight, learned the challenges, explained the facts, organized the lobbying days, et cetera, and et cetera. Anybody feel like they built some skills in the process? Strengthened skills, capacity, local organizing? Because I know you did. Teaching for all healthcare persons. They went into it because they care. I got comfortable just trying, even if I couldn't do it perfectly. Talking to strangers about New York heat. Yes, absolutely. I learned a bit about how to leave my comfort zone. The more important the change, the longer the haul. I got so good at making chili on an induction stove. That is very valuable. Grateful to the leaders who gave us such great focus. I learned how things actually work in the legislature. That is huge. So much building has happened, me personally and public perceptions. We need a new strategy. What we're doing is not working. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. The lack of transparency in the role of fund money in elections, lobbying are disconcerting to the extreme. The fact is that most of our assembly members don't have the power with which we, the voters, think we have invested them. That's a
Yeah,
little
and I do want to, so I think we should end this section with Jessica's comment, and while also agreeing that our legislature needs more than 3 people in a room. We did, this year, we mobilized like never before, and that's amazing. Yeah, Carol, do you want to take us home?
I think we're on time, and we want to thank you for sharing. And I just want to encourage people that this is just like sticking your finger in the sugar bowl. The idea here is, as much as possible on a personal level, try to remember that it is not a personal indulgence. The reason we call this sustaining ourselves so that we are able to sustain our movement is that there is a very pragmatic ingredient here, so that taking the time to do what you need to do for yourself, whatever that is worth it. It pays off.
Wonderful words, Carol. Yeah, thank you. We were debating over that last slide. I don't want to be corny, but it really, thank you to everyone. It's a real pleasure, and we're gonna win this. We absolutely will. So I'll send it back to Kim or Lisa now.
Yeah, I can take over. I see Laura is asking for us to stay on for another minute. So, Laura, did you have an announcement to make? And for those of you who can't stay past 8, feel free. Class is dismissed.
Lisa has a poll for everyone to participate in if people
Great.
can stay on. This is a Zoom poll to kind of get a sense of how you're feeling for our next steps. I think that's a poll that Lisa can launch through Zoom. And this kind of will help us have a temperature check of how you're all doing, although you've already shared in the chat. We want more data.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ending the poll, sharing the results. You guys all see that? Can everyone see?
Yes. People are ready to fight until June. People are ready to escalate, and a few people want to regroup and win next year.
And it looks like people were able to choose multiple options, which I think is good.
No, you can just have one feeling.
Okay, Kim, take us home.
I think we did, right? Yeah, I just want to thank everybody. I will, I think I put the link to the video in, I'll do that. Oh, let me put it in the link to the video in our in the chat. Um, and it's also for those of you who do comms work, it is in our photos and videos shared Renewable Heat Now folder. So I can't find it right now, but well, I'll make sure that it gets emailed out to y'all. Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a sweet dream tonight.